happy to bring two guests on today that definitely have perspective on two aspects that we've been discussing for the last 30 minutes or so. Arkansas versus Arkansas State. Arkansas playing games at War Memorial Stadium. Dudley Dawson joins us in an hour. We've got Bob Holt right here with the Democrat-Gazette, and, of course, been covering Arkansas athletics since 1981. So, Bob, I guess I would ask, did you ever think you'd see the day? But the writing's been on the wall for a while now with Hunter Yurachek as the athletic director. So I don't think any of us are really surprised if we're paying attention the last 2 years that Arkansas versus Arkansas State is happening. But I want you to transport yourself back to the 1980s when you were a young cub reporter at the Democrat or the Gazette. I forget which one you worked at. And tell me, the mindset of somebody from 30 years ago. If they had to wake up today and see the news, what would your reaction be?
Yeah, well, I started the Democrat, but yeah, it would have been, a shock 30 years ago, maybe even, 10 years ago, because, that was very embedded. Arkansas did not play Arkansas State, I'll tell you this, I'm not going to say who it was, but I had a coach in a non-revenue sport who told me in the late 80s that this coach wanted to schedule Arkansas State to drum up some more interest in that person's sport. And so that person went to Coach Burrows and said, "Hey, Coach, you wouldn't have a problem with me scheduling Arkansas State, would you?" And Frank Burrows' response was, "Yeah, I would." Because the feeling was it was sort of the domino theory. If you play in, these non-revenue sports, then, next thing you know, they want to be playing in football, So we can't play, Arkansas's feeling was, from the administration was, we can't play Arkansas State or any of these schools in anything, because next thing you know, they want to be playing us in football, for God's sake, or whatever in the world that they're doing that. And, the feeling was Arkansas's got everything to lose and nothing to gain. And so, and also, I don't know if this really was valid, but they said, well, this way everybody can root for the Razorbacks. Like if you're an Arkansas State fan and we don't play you, you can still root for us. And I'm sure there are a lot of Arkansas fans in Northeast Arkansas and Jonesboro. But you really saw, and I guess it really hit home with me in that 1987 NIT game when Arkansas was really forced to play Arkansas State in the NIT. And the NIT, they're all about making money, so they knew that game would sell out and create a lot of interest. And Arkansas, it's not like Arkansas said, well, we won't play in the NIT. If you make us play Arkansas State, they agreed to play. And that was a wild game. Arkansas State got up big. And I think initially Arkansas felt the pressure because ASU was losing. And when ASU got a big lead, they had something to lose, which was a big lead, and they did. And Arkansas won it in overtime. Just a really crazy, exciting game. But I remember there was, 1,000 ASU fans that had gotten tickets. I guess ASU got a ticket allotment because it was the NIT. And when Arkansas was losing, the Arkansas fans were very quiet, as you can imagine. The Arkansas State fans were, very raucous, and their cheerleaders had a sign, and they brought it out and said, "Arkansas, how long will you run?" And I remember thinking, if Arkansas loses this game, there might be a riot and people might get hurt. I really believe that. And Arkansas came back and won, so there wasn't a riot. But that's when it really hit me how volatile the situation was. And then over the years, obviously, things have changed. And certainly in this pandemic, schools are trying to do more regional scheduling. But, yeah, I agree. It's time. And if you want to keep games in Little Rock, Arkansas has a dilemma. They don't want to move SEC games off campus. They want to keep playing games in Little Rock. Little Rock wants relevant games, the War Memorial Stadium Commission. So playing a Sun Belt team like Troy or, Louisiana Monroe is not really that significant. If you play Arkansas State, that's significant. So this is a thing, a game that really kind of, helps you do both things. Arkansas gets to keep the Missouri game on campus, and War Memorial gets a relevant game. And sorry that was such a long-winded answer.
Bob, I think that Hunter Yurachek and his staff and all the people that went into these decisions deserve a lot of credit, because I think they're put in a position where they want to please Sam Pittman, who, for obvious reasons, and justifiably so, wants all SEC home games to be played in Fayetteville, but you have a contract with War Memorial Stadium to live up to. So you're placed some people would say that's a rock and a hard place. I see an administration that got creative and came up with, I think, a solution that works really well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And also, it's not just a contract to fulfill, but you feel an obligation. If you're Arkansas, you're a statewide program, and let's face it, the biggest games used to be played in Little Rock because that was by far the biggest population base, and Gore Memorial Stadium. I mean, I remember when I first got hired up here into Fayetteville, so Razorback Stadium. I mean, it was a 40,000-seat stadium, and I remember thinking, this is the Razorback Stadium, the team that beat Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl, and has won all these games under Frank Bros and Lou Holt. But and now, obviously, there's a lot of population in Northwest Arkansas, but still in Central Arkansas. And so if you really want to maintain a statewide program and maintain support, you want to keep that link to Central Arkansas. Like Hunter said yesterday, the baseball team plays down there every year. The basketball teams, men's and women's, would have played this year except for the pandemic. I'm sure that will return. So, if your other sports are playing down there, your football team should too. But the other sports are not playing conference games down there. So I think, I agree. They got very creative, and I think they came with a solution that maybe isn't perfect, maybe doesn't satisfy everybody, but I think it's a good solution for Central Arkansas, for the Razorbacks, wanting to play SEC games on campus, all the SEC games on campus. And, I think it's a plan that worked out well for most everybody.
Bob Holt joining us here on Halftime. Bob, when it's all said and done with these contracts, and we can throw in AT&T Stadium in the mix as well, of your personal opinion, and then we can kind of give me your personal opinion and then what the Razorbacks should do. If both were on the table, which contract do you want to see stick around? A non-conference game at AT&T Stadium or something at War Memorial Stadium?
Well, I mean, when that contract runs out at AT&T Stadium, A&M is not going to agree to play. So, I mean, when that contract runs out, you're not going to see Arkansas and A&M play in AT&T Stadium anymore. That's definitely the Aggies don't want to do it. It's a little more sensitive for Arkansas because Jerry Jones is such a generous booster to the Razorbacks and an alum. And maybe, Hunter didn't rule out the possibility of maybe playing, games in AT&T Stadium at a future date, but I think that would be non-conference games, and it wouldn't be like an every year thing. So I think what you're more likely to see is Arkansas continue to have a presence in Little Rock. We know it's going to be for the next, 5 years, or 21, 22, 23, 5 years. Sorry to cut on my thumb there. And I think you'll see Arkansas continue to play in Central Arkansas beyond that. Some of that will depend on improvements made to the stadium, who they can schedule to play in there. But and people may think, wow, UAPB, that's a SWAC team. But I think playing UAPB is a lot bigger deal than playing Alcorn or, Jackson State or whoever you might play in there, because it's a local team. And it's good for UAB because they just got to hop on a bus and ride, 45 minutes or whatever it is from Pine Bluff, and they can get tickets. The way you help sell that game out is UAPB fans are excited to see their team play the Razorbacks. So, they would certainly bring more fans than other SWAC or, MEAC teams or whoever you might schedule in there. So I think you could see UAPB, maybe that becomes a regular game every other year, and they get somebody else. But it's hard for me to see Arkansas just totally moving out of Little Rock. I mean, obviously things can change, as we've seen change yesterday, but that AT&T game, that's against A&M, that's not going to happen after the contract runs out, I don't believe.
When you look at this Arkansas State matchup, and obviously we've got 4 years to hype this thing up and look at this thing in every which way and shape and form, but you've seen this a lot on social media. We've had several people call in and texted in here on our show, is that the Razorbacks have nothing to gain but everything to lose in this matchup with Arkansas State. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, Hunter pointed this out too. UALR came to Fayetteville a couple of years ago to Baum Stadium and beat Dave Van Horn and the Razorbacks 17-7. And it was a shock, and frankly, I think it was embarrassing for Arkansas. I guess Bill probably called that game, I think, unless he had a different commitment. And but hey, the world didn't fall off its axis and into the galaxy. Arkansas went to College World Series. Arkansas has continued to be a top 10 program, one of the best in the country. And if on 2025, whatever date it is, September 2nd, I don't have it in front of me, if Arkansas State wins that game, yeah, that'll be a big deal for Arkansas State, and it'll be bad for Arkansas. But just like what we were talking about, the reason this is a win, quote, for Arkansas, I would call it a win-win because Arkansas State gets to finally play Arkansas after, never playing them and wanting to play them. And Arkansas wins because they can move that Missouri game back to Fayetteville, and they can still have what I would call a game of consequence in Little Rock because, there'll probably be more interest in Arkansas State, or the interest level in that will be like an SEC game, if not bigger, depending on the SEC opponent, because, that game's going to be anticipated forever. And so, both teams have been playing for 100 years, more than 100 years, and they've never played, so that's finally going to happen. And so, but I think it's a win for Arkansas because it allows them to do what they want to do, which is get more SEC home games on campus. So I don't think, Arkansas will drop football if they happen to lose that game. And I think if they play, 10 times, I don't know, all due respect to Arkansas State, I don't think they're going to win very often. Now, Arkansas State fans especially would probably say, well, gosh, Chad Morris's years, Arkansas State had a better team. And they probably did. I don't know if they had more talent, but they probably had better teams. And it would not have surprised me at all to see Arkansas State beat Arkansas in 2018 or 2019. But by 2025, I think Dan Pittman will have the program on pretty solid foundation. Obviously, time will tell. I think Arkansas State's a quality, Sun Belt program. But let's face it, we're talking about the SEC and the Sun Belt. It's apples and oranges. But that doesn't mean a Sun Belt team can't be an SEC team, as we've obviously seen at times in the past.
Right. Bob, real quick before we let you go, obviously the news coming across that Arkansas, Texas A&M is going to be off this Saturday. Just your initial thoughts with that, and I think me and Phil were talking priorities, us getting you on. This is a good time for this team to get healed up and get ready to go for Kentucky.
Yeah, not really a surprise the game got postponed because A&M had to postpone its game scheduled for Wednesday night against Vanderbilt. So they announced that on Tuesday. So whenever that happened, you figure, well, if a team has to postpone a game on Wednesday night, probably at best 50-50 if they can play Saturday. So not really a surprise. And it's kind of, I agree, Arkansas's got a lot of guys banged up. Justin Smith is still dealing with that ankle, even though he's been able to play, but I think he misses some practices between games. That surgically repaired ankle. Moses Moody, as we found out after the game Tuesday night, had to miss Monday's practice because he had an ankle issue. And, he played pretty well, had 13 points, but he didn't look like he missed 2 free throws back-to-back. And I remember thinking, well, that's pretty weird because Moses doesn't do that. So I bet that ankle was bothering him. We saw Desi hurt his shoulder and come out of the game. Eric said he could have come back in, or he was cleared medically to come back in, but I'm sure that shoulder was hurting him. And Jalen Williams was clearly, kind of being ginger with that knee he hurt. So, yeah, there's 4, and there's probably other guys that have things we don't know about. There's 4 guys right there that have been dealing with pretty serious injuries, so they get an extra few days to get ready. On the other hand, Arkansas has, been hot. They've won 4 straight conference games. They played pretty well at Oklahoma State. So, and it's a home game, and certainly a very winnable home game. So if you're Arkansas, you'd probably like to play, but it's not all bad. You get to heal up, get a bit of a mental break, and get ready for Kentucky. You just hope they can play the game at the end of the season. The SEC, that the weekend before the SEC tournament has been left open to play rescheduled games. So you hope Arkansas can get that game back in then.
Well, we got to run. Appreciate your time, man. We'll talk next week.
Okay, you guys take care.
You got it. See you in the produce section anytime soon. Hey, don't forget about Wheels RV. They want to invite you out to skip all of the lines at RV shows because they've got the best deals right now at Northwest Arkansas's premier RV dealer. All the best brands in the industry: Grand Design, Forest Rivers, solar-powered Vibe, and the all-new Alliance RV fifth wheels. It's KZ Sportsmen, and they're the only lifetime warranty dealer in Northwest Arkansas and the River Valley. You can ask about lifetime warranties, RV storage, mobile service shuttle. Helps making owning a new RV never easier than before. RV show pricing begins now at Wheels, 5 miles west off exit 72 in Springdale. Seek, explore, discover, wheelsrv.net. First hour wrapping up. Stay tuned.